Okay, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Hillary Schneider. I'm excited for this video today. I wanted to do something to kind of dispel the myth of six figures. So today's video, I'm going to talk about the whole concept of reaching six figures in your business and how we measure success, and to give a little bit of space to what is the more authentic way for us to create abundance in our practice, because usually that reach for six figures is actually symbolic of something deeper, of creating prosperity or abundance in our practice. And I want to talk about how we actually go about doing that, and how the whole six figures things is a little bit of a myth. So if you're in a place where you're looking to, or you're reaching, or you have this also kind of goal of I need to reach six figures, and it's feeling really creating some resistance for you, this is going to be an impactful video to listen to. So a little bit of my sort of backstory. I transitioned into the online world in 2000, and I think it was 14. And up until that point, I had been running a in-person retreat center. I didn't have any online services, and I was sort of in a place in my business where my business was not generating the income that it needed to pay my bills, essentially. And so I needed to change something. And so I was encouraged to start my coaching practice that I'd sort of been avoiding for years. That's a whole other different topic that maybe I'll speak to one time. And I remember getting online, and there was a lot of this messaging around reaching six figures. And for me, six figures was a necessity. I had a very high overhead running business where at my old property, it's a lot more now that I'm on my 80-acre retreat center, but I needed to make $125,000 a year just to break even. So six figures was a necessity. Now, what I want to say is there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a goal of reaching a certain amount of money. Whether that be six figures or seven figures or whatever. But what I have found for me personally, after hitting those numbers, I realized that wasn't really what I was gearing towards, and it actually didn't support me in reaching what I needed to create for my business. And so this is where I wanted to offer a little bit more depth, because six figures doesn't really mean anything. And the where I mean that is I make six figures. I make multiple six figures. I have for the last what year is it now? 2020. So for the last 5 or 6 years, I've made multiple six figures in my business. I've generated over $1 million in my business over a 5-year span. It doesn't really mean anything. And why I mean that is I also have expenses that are six figures. So I don't have a profitable, well, my coaching business is profitable. My retreat center is not. So what I realized was hitting these six-figure numbers was sort of a hollow goal, because it wasn't actually creating what I wanted to create in my business. And I think sometimes we get so obsessed about the number, we don't actually think about what it is that we're trying to cultivate in our business. And so I rather look to having a goal around prosperity and profit. So thinking about what is the frequency, or what is it that I'm trying to create in my business financially, that is not necessarily associated to number. And the way I say that, when I'm working with this with clients of mine and I ask them a question of where you really need to know, first of all, is what does it look like for you to support your business? Like, what are your expenses of your life? I need to generate, 30 to 40K per month, because that's what my expenses are, for my overhead. And so we do need to know what our number is, just in order to support, what do we need to generate in our business, but to not get so fixated on six figures. And so as a breakdown, I had a client, for example, that in her case, 2,000 to 5,000 felt really good for her to generate in her business, because that's what, felt profitable and abundant for her in her life. Sometimes we can feel like if we're not shooting for the six figures, we're not allowing ourselves to reach for abundance, and it can cultivate a lot of shame. And so one of the things that I often will say when I'm doing this work around this is we want to find that space that actually reflects and aligns to us and our version of success, regardless of what that number is. So for that particular client, 2 to 5K, we started at 2, went to 5K. That meant profitability for her. So that's awesome. And that was sort of for her, the feeling that felt really good. We can always expand it from there. But instead of reaching towards that, oh, I need to get to six figures, I need to get six figures, which actually created resistance and shutdown for her, we focused instead of what is that number that feels really supportive and spacious and profitable for you? And that's what we want to hold. And so the same for my practice, you know, when I got to the point of, okay, this is great, I'm hitting multiple six figures, it's not changing anything I feel around money. You know, I'm still feeling stretched. I don't always, like, I'm still living, you know, month to month because I have a massive cash flow. That's not really what I want to gear towards. So I changed it instead of what's the essence of what I'm trying to cultivate in my business, regardless of what that number is, right? So I want things to feel spacious. I want to have a excess in my bank account. I want there to be profitability. I want to create prosperity, you know, the feeling of prosperity that has nothing to do with the number of how much you earn. And so I really started there first. And so I think that what I would encourage if you're listening to this is, how do you want your financial space to feel? Is it profitability? Is it prosperity? Is it ease? You know, I want you to think about, what are you trying to cultivate that is not associated to a number, right? And then, you know, the processes we go through, you know, what is, you know, if we just looked at the practicalities of it, what are the numbers of my life, right? So I know what my expenses are. You need to do that. What are my expenses? And then if I want to gear towards profitability or excess, what does that look like? You know, that looks differently for every single person. I am not a particular person that values things like, I'm not a traveler, you know, there's not a lot of access that I need to have a happy life. I'd love to live in a nice home. A lot of my fulfillment in my abundance or in money comes to being able to easily pay my bills and support my space and my horses and, you know, buy really good food. So we all have, it looks differently for each one of us. We all have our different values of the quality of life and what we need. So it's a really good thing to really sit with that. Instead of borrowing a version of what we see online, we want to really actually ask ourselves, what does that look like for me? So define that for yourself. And then, you know, you might sort of have a number, obviously, when you go through all of that. When I'm reaching goals financially, I put as much attention on what's the feeling of it, you know, than the number. When I'm just fixating on the number, I'm losing that space of, you know, how I want it to feel. Here's a perfect example of this. Instead of going, I need to make X amount per month, which I do. I say I make X amount a month, but I still have $5,000 of profitability. That's win for me. Who cares what the number is, right? So there's a less holding of like that six-figure number. And for me, it's more about, where am I at the end of the day? Do I have excess? Do I have the money in a bank that feels supportive for me? Am I able to pay my bills with ease? How does it feel and how money is coming to me? That is a win much more than if I am attaching myself to a certain number. I realize it's getting a little bit windy while I'm outside, so I'm hoping the sound kind of holds okay. But so I think the more important thing, instead of getting fixated on a certain number that you have to reach, focus instead on what is the essence of what you're trying to cultivate and measure your success financially on that. Because, and again, what I found, I hit those numbers. You know, I've hit, last year I made $374,000 in my business. That's awesome. I wasn't at that space of profit that was really important to me. My experience of that exchange didn't feel as good. I'm recording this in a time where we're in the middle of COVID. My revenue is going to go down this year. And I've been working a lot around how I want to feel around money. I actually have more money in my bank and in my savings right now in the middle of a pandemic because I've been focusing on this. So I feel actually a lot better about that. And that's reflected in, you know, what's being generated in my business. And I'm not actually worrying so much of if I have a lower number this year than last year. So I'm not fixating on that final number. If you're in a place where, you know, it would feel really good to me to make 50 or 60K this year because that feels really spacious to me and supportive of my life, that is awesome. Let go of having to reach the six-figure thing because that doesn't mean anything. That's not reflected in anything. I don't think that necessarily has to be the goal. That's not where I get my fulfillment from. And to me, it's like that's not really reflective of anything. I know a lot of business owners that talk about this. They make, you know, $300,000 to $400,000 a year, and their expenses kind of match that. So it's all relative, you know, it's all relative. So I hope that this was helpful in a sense of maybe creating a different intention around what you're going for in your business or what you're wanting to cultivate in your life. Focus on your alignment and your value of what you want to cultivate when it comes to revenue or how much money you want to make. Start there first. What's the value of what you want to create and generate with money? How do you want that to feel? What are you wanting to create that is not associated to a certain number? And then do the practical things of like, what are your expenses per month? What feels like a really supportive and spacious addition to that is going to reflect what maybe six figure symbolizes, you know, that feels maybe abundant to you. We all have our different numbers. Focus on what feels good to you, not a comparison to somebody else, right? So this is another thing. Sometimes we get really caught into, we get caught into other people's version of success. And that's not our version. And so I think it's really important to sit with what's your version, what's your alignment, what's your value in that. And then when you cultivate a number for yourself that matches that, I want you to focus instead more on what is the feeling around that instead of the number. Like I said, sometimes I don't hit my monthly numbers and I have the profit and the abundance that is actually reflective in that. And so that's my measurement of success, if that kind of makes sense, because I have obviously certain months are more expensive than others. So there's sort of like a flow. And then celebrate that, you know, celebrate what your unique perspective of success is. Six figures doesn't mean anything. It's just a very hollow goal that I think is not rooted in anything substantial, and it doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. So this is where we want to sort of get into what does this mean for you. So I hope that was helpful, and maybe that gave you some permission and relaxing and relief around having to have a goal that maybe doesn't resonate for you, and a different way of reaching that goal that maybe provides a little bit more spaciousness. When we feel resistant and contracted and shut down, we're not going to be able to create and cultivate what we're wanting to see financially in our business. Okay. As a sidebar, I recently created an ebook called Healing Our Relationship with Money. And this is one of the things that has been really impactful for me about really shifting how I relate to money, how I hold it, and has supported creating the abundance in my business. It's $22. It comes with practices, resources, meditations, different teachings that I use that have been really helpful. So if money is sort of the thing that you need to kind of work on right now, you can pop into the link in the video and find that ebook. And if you need a little bit of deeper support, that can give it to you. Otherwise, let me know how this resonated, questions, comments, and we will see you on the next video.